Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez. Behind the scenes is Nicole Burdick, and we're so glad you're here because it's story time. Presently, the Phyrexians are poised to spread across every plane they can get their oily fingers on, but this is not the first time everything has been on the line for Magic's multiverse. We've had to deal with scheming elder dragons and cosmic forces that exist in the space between worlds. And it all leaves me with one question. Which of Magic the Gathering's interplanar threats is truly the most dangerous game? Before we can answer that, let me invite you to check out the sponsor for this video, Into the AM. They make the most comfortable, best-fitting shirts I've ever owned, and I want you to experience them too. So use my link down below or type in promo code MAGICARCANUM when you check out, and you'll save 10% on your entire order. If you've got a favorite Magic character or plane, Into the AM has a graphic tee with a design to match. You already coordinate your sleeves with your deck. Why stop there? Grab a bundle and save even more while you support the show just by using my link to Into the AM right in the description of this video. Alright, now let's take a look at some of the most terrible powers to ever threaten our existence. This should be fun. We'll start with Nicol Bolas and his army of Eternals. Nicky B, as I like to call him, is an elder dragon born thousands of years ago on Dominaria. His spark ignited at the conclusion of the Elder Dragon War, and he's been a danger to the multiverse ever since. What does all that mean? Well, first, Elder Dragons are some of the most powerful living creatures in the game. We've encountered them on a few different planes now, and no matter where they are, they display great wisdom, strength, and aptitude for magic. On top of that, Bolas was what we call a pre-mending planeswalker, which further increased his power. In the old days, planeswalkers were basically gods, but due to a whole lot of stuff I'm not going to get into here today, we ended up with an event called the Mending, which really lowered their level cap, I guess. Anyway, Nicol Bolas survived the Mending, but was frustrated by his reduction in power and immediately started looking for ways to reclaim it. Ultimately, this would lead to a conflict known as the War of the Spark, in which the plane of Ravnica served as the farmland from which Bolas intended to harvest godhood. His plan was to lure other planeswalkers to Ravnica and trap them there, using a supremely powerful magical artifact called the Immortal Sun, combined with an ancient bit of magic called the Elder Spell. To carry out this invasion, Bolas used an army of Eternals. These were zombies, or more accurately mummies, from the plane of Amonkhet, coated in a special mineral called lazotep. Citizens of Amonkhet competed in the Trials, with the goal of earning a ritualistic killing from one of the plane's gods. These perfect specimens were then treated with lazotep and stored until Bolas called upon them, many, many years after he had brainwashed the plane's gods into serving him and running this whole process while he was away. So, the Eternals were a massive army made up from the most skilled warriors Amonkhet could raise over many generations, and they were imbued with a mineral coating that made them even more durable than regular zombies. Gameplay-wise, we saw them represented by the Amass mechanic from War of the Spark, and while that could give you a huge token creature, it was singular in focus. You could attack with it or keep it back to block, and just one well-aimed spell could disband or kill the entire army. That is, unless you could call upon lazotep to protect them, or provide them with leaders who would keep them out of trouble. While the Eternals did manage to collect sparks from a large number of planeswalkers trapped on Ravnica, their power was still not enough to secure victory for Nicol Bolas, and he was stopped by the sudden but inevitable betrayal of his contracted slave, Liliana Vess. Nicol Bolas has an interesting card history. He started as a legendary creature that captured his Elder Dragon origins, but eventually received several different Planeswalker cards, showing him at various points in his life. He's also one of the few characters to get a flip card that starts as a creature and becomes a planeswalker, which depicts him at his pre-mending level of power shortly after his spark ignited. With all of the advantages granted to him by his Elder Dragon birth, his Planeswalker spark, and his personal army of magically enhanced elite warriors, you'd think Nicol Bolas would have no trouble dominating the multiverse. I've heard people say that Liliana throwing off her yoke and turning against Nicol Bolas was lazy writing, but I have to firmly disagree. Nicol Bolas is thousands of years old, and in all of that time, he's very rarely been surprised by anything. His power and wisdom generally protect him from that, so it's quite reasonable that now, as his schemes are finally paying off, he would fall to his own hubris. Remember, he did anticipate Liliana trying to break her contract, and he had a plan in place for that. She was supposed to die, but Bolas did not expect someone else to sacrifice themselves to save Liliana, because Bolas would never do that for anyone, nor could he imagine someone willing to do that for him. Harry Potter did it first. I know. Anyway, after his defeat on Ravnica, Bolas was stripped of his spark and locked away in the prison realm with his twin brother Ugin watching over him. He went from being one of the biggest threats to the multiverse to just a little birdie in a cage in the span of like one day. War of the Spark was crazy. But that is a story for another time, because next we're looking at the Eldrazi. I was going to say they're the most misunderstood creatures in all of Magic, but that would imply it is possible to understand them to begin with, and I don't think that's the case. We know very, very little about the Eldrazi and the role they play in the multiverse. One popular assumption is that they are part of some sort of cleanup system devouring planes so that their matter can be recycled into something new, but personally, I never really bought into that. Here's what we know for sure. The Eldrazi, the actual Eldrazi, exist in the Blind Eternities. That is the space between planes. It is the connective fabric that binds the multiverse together, and the chaotic energies found there are hazardous to every other known life form. When planeswalkers planeswalk, they pass through the Blind Eternities, and their spark protects them from harm as they do this. But if they try to bring anything organic with them on their journey, it is usually destroyed in transit. For the Eldrazi, it sort of works in reverse, but also not. They stay in the Blind Eternities and project a version of themselves onto a plane. You can interact with this projection and even kill it, but it is unclear if this also harms the actual creature, which is still in the Blind Eternities. And this is further complicated by the situation on Innistrad, where one of the Eldrazi titans, Emrakul, is currently imprisoned in the plane's Silver Moon. But from what we've been told, this should be only a projection of the real Emrakul, or a portion of her existence as manifested on the plane. So, does that mean the real creature is still in the Blind Eternities at the same time? Or does binding her here also prevent her from being anywhere else at the same time? As for what the Eldrazi really do, again, the story is light on details. One popular theory, as I said, was that they are a recycling crew. That does not make a lot of sense to me. If they were interested in dead or dying planes that had outlived their usefulness, then they wouldn't have been attracted to the abundant mana of Zendikar or the cryptolith beacons created by Nahiri on Innistrad, because those things indicated lively planes. Likewise, in one of the few stories we got featuring Nahiri, Ugin, and Sorin facing the Eldrazi many years ago, they were defending an unnamed but populated plane against the Eldrazi. Nothing here implied that this plane was in need of being recycled. If anything, it seems the Eldrazi prefer to feast on mana-rich planes, but we never get a reason why. This is why I tend to view them more as a natural storm, like a tornado or a hurricane. In theory, these weather events are random, but it often feels like they hit populated areas more, Because we have people living there to tell us about it. People also tend to live in areas where the geography lends itself to certain types of weather events forming, like the flat grasslands of Kansas for tornadoes, or the warm and humid coastal regions that make a perfect breeding ground for hurricanes. So, do the Eldrazi seek out settled plains because those are more rich in mana and thus more enjoyable for them to consume? Or do we hear about those more because characters like Sorin and the Gatewatch have been present to fight on behalf of the people who live in these places? Or do the Eldrazi just randomly feed on whatever's convenient, regardless of how old or new a given plane may be? Oh, and one other thing regarding the recycle theory. We've seen the Eldrazi destroy planes, yes, but we've never really heard about a new plane spontaneously coming into existence, at least not since the Eldrazi have been introduced to the story. Planes have been artificially created by characters, but has the multiverse itself ever made use of this supposedly repurposed building material to generate a new plane? Or has it not been possible because the three Eldrazi Titans were locked up on Zendikar for so long? You'll have to let me know what you think about that down in the comments, for sure. So, the Eldrazi are dangerous, but they are also wild and unpredictable. You can lure them to a place if you have the right technology, but then they try to consume everything there. You can't really use them as an ally in a fight, for example, because they'll eat you just as eagerly as they eat your enemy. That's why I'm sticking with my weather analogy. You don't ask a tornado to help you plant your crops, and you don't ask the Eldrazi to help you conquer the multiverse, no matter how powerful they appear to be. Which leaves us with the Phyrexians, or actually new Phyrexians, since the original ones were pretty much obliterated by people who didn't have obliterators on their side. Whatever. Elesh Norn has a grand vision. She wants to unify the multiverse under her leadership and spread the glory of her great machine orthodoxy so that all will be one. The Eldrazi try to destroy everything, but it's not personal. They're just doing what comes to them naturally. Nicol Bolas wanted to kill a lot of people, but only so he could reclaim the power that was taken from him. He was just trying to right a perceived wrong. But for Norn and her Phyrexian empire, it is very personal, and in a way, that makes them uniquely terrifying. Between violent infections and surgeries to remake your physical form, to an oil that strips away your individual identity and replaces it with blind obedience, the Phyrexians are only interested in what you can offer them. They are all take and no give. Again, Bolas was evil and power hungry, yes, I know, but he did leave kingdoms in his wake. He had subjects, and while their quality of life might not have always been great, he did reward the few allies he had, and he encouraged their loyalty through means other than infectious reprogramming. And the Eldrazi could randomly eat you up and spit you out, but even Emrakul realized that it was not yet Innistrād's time. And so she let those people live to see another day. Or a really long night. But still. If Elesh Norn gets her way, all life as we know it stops. And it gets replaced with a synthetic simulacrum, a phony, a proxy. There will be nothing original left. Just a sea of ossified bodies, forever bowing to the mother of machines. Can the Phyrexians be stopped? Well, they have been before, and recent stories have already shown us cracks in their porcelain veneer, so I think Elesh Norn will be defeated, but it will come at a steep cost. Bolas and the Eldrazi were also difficult to deal with, and the Gatewatch found what I must generously describe as temporary solutions, so the title of Most Dangerous Game will remain up for grabs. Which leads me to the final part of my assessment here, the team-ups. Yeah, I've read all the theories, so allow me to grab my magical Tommy gun and blast a few holes in them. Could the Phyrexians infect and complete the Eldrazi? I don't think so. As we've said, the Eldrazi exist in the blind eternities, and their physical forms are able to withstand the chaotic and destructive energies there. So I don't know how you'd even deliver glistening oil to them, much less how it would manage to work on their entirely alien biology. Could you infect their projections, at least? The drones or other smaller creatures, if not the titans themselves? I still don't think so. As soon as the infection took root, the Eldrazi would probably sever its connection, the same way you pull your hand out of the water when the fish start to bite. A piranha might take a few fingers off, but it's not bringing down the whole person, especially if they're not getting into the water, right? Okay, what about the rebels and the Gatewatch? Could they somehow unleash Emrakul and use the Eldrazi against the Phyrexians? I don't think so. The only one who knows how to unlock Emrakul is Emrakul. She had used a very advanced form of mind control on Tamiyo to enact the binding spell. And my takeaway there is that nobody else can undo that magic, even if they wanted to. And yes, that includes Tamiyo, who wasn't aware of what she was doing while she did it. So even though she is now a Phyrexian, she doesn't have the ability to free Emrakul, even if she has the desire. But even if the Gatewatch could, I don't know, use a variation of Nahiri's cryptoliths to summon other Eldrazi from the Blind Eternities, that doesn't really help the situation. You've just cluttered the battlefield with creatures that are as dangerous to your side as they are to your enemy. Even if the Phyrexians are defeated this way, you now have an Eldrazi problem to deal with, and you probably just exhausted your resources fighting the Phyrexians. So now you're in an even worse spot. Doesn't seem worth it. Okay then, what about Nicol Bolas? Could the Gatewatch come to him for help against the Phyrexians? Maybe. Ugin is presently the stronger of the twins, so I would start with him, but the only person who knows where to find the Elder Dragons at all is Jace. Though it's possible that information was written down somewhere or shared before his own completion, just in case. Nicol Bolas was aware of the Phyrexians and had intended to stomp them out of existence once he had reclaimed his god-level powers after using the Elder Spell. Unfortunately, since he never got those powers, and actually had his spark taken from him, he is now in no shape to offer any sort of help to the Gatewatch. He is still smart and physically strong, assuming he has recovered from his defeat on Ravnica by now, but there are plenty of other non-evil Elder Dragons out there I would go to first. Like the ones on Tarkir, or the founders of Strixhaven, for example. If the Biblioplex really contains records of all magic used all over the multiverse, it's possible they've already heard of the Phyrexians, or even know of other ways to defeat them. So yeah, I think the final act of the Phyrexian arc will not include a surprise last-minute appearance by the Eldrazi, nor by Nicol Bolas. And I'm kind of glad. I think March of the Machine and the legendary team-ups it brings will be far more interesting, and help keep the focus on the threat of the Phyrexians and the people fighting to protect their homes from completion. But what about you? Who do you think is the most dangerous game in the multiverse? Which team-up will stop Elesh Norn before all become one? And why is everyone obsessed with Emrakul getting out of that moon? I mean, doesn't Innistrad deserve a break? Let me know what you think in the comments. Visit my link for Into the AM while you're down there, and make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. We'll see ya!